On today's episode of the Process Podcast, I got a chance to sit down with ELMNT, a musical artist and entrepreneur based out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada. We touch on a ton of topics like what habits make a great artist, how to stay consistent, and where to even get started. We even got a chance to talk about his own creative process and some of the stories that have inspired his favorite projects. You can find timestamps for all the things we discuss in the description below, and I had a great time talking to my boy, so I hope you guys can enjoy it too. Welcome to the Process Podcast. Today, I'm joined by a very special guest. He is an artist, a rapper, a producer, an influencer, a content creator, an entrepreneur, and a very good friend. Please welcome ELMNT to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Man, thanks for having me here, brother. Mr. Nick Me in the flesh.
Well, man, this is your first time in Calgary or Western Canada in general, man. So,
It is.
Have you been enjoying your trip? Like, what have you been doing? Like, what's your experience like here?
It's been wild, man. It's been a really fast-paced environment, but I'm surrounded by nature, good air, good people, good conversations. Been able to snag a lot of dope sessions, courtesy of my brother Seraphin that brought me out here. Went out to Edmonton, cooked, had a lot of vital meetings, I feel like.
Right.
You know, just like I feel like the right seeds were planted. Got to meet a lot of like the newcomer scene as well, work with them a little bit.
Right.
To be honest, with the workflow has been pretty insane.
No, honestly, man, I've been keeping up with you guys on Instagram and stuff like that. Like, seeing you go straight up every single day, working on something new, creating something new, man, like, I'm sure a lot of people struggle with this out there, but like, how do you find the energy to be so consistent like that?
I love what I do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I actually really love it.
Yeah.
I go to bed doing it. I wake up doing it. Like when I'm not actually making music, I'm doing something around it. You know, I'm learning about new processes, new things that are appearing like in the industry, and just trying to keep myself sharp. I guess I'm kind of addicted to like what like the byproduct of what's happening is not like I'm not obsessed with like where I'm gonna get with this. I really am just having fun. You know what I mean?
100%.
So like every day is like seize the opportunity that comes. Just be prepped. You know?
Right. Yeah, man. And I guess, like, you know, you're talking about music right now, so you consider music your main kind of canvas in life, because you do a lot of stuff, man, or you kind of feel like a true renaissance man, like you truly have yourself in each of the different things you're doing.
Which is, I guess, a good and a bad thing. I mean, I don't rely off of music alone. I don't like to put that pressure onto it. When COVID affected all of us like in different ways, but for musicians specifically, our outlets to play live shows, sell our merch, it got truncated. So just to think on my feet and be prepared for things like this, which you can never really be too prepared for, was like me just kind of like seeing where I'm at, where I want to be, and planting the seeds. So like now I started to cash in on some of the things that I've been working on. You know, like behind the scenes, I'm doing a lot of planning in the industry, and you know, A&Ring and running and managing a label and cultivating new talent, putting out records online, and because of that, I've been able to kind of like expand and branch out in different ways and get contracts within different industries that are looking for like the artist standard, you know, to like advertising and strategies and stuff like that. And it's been an interesting ride thus far, man. It's been really dope, dude. Yeah.
And like, just I'm sure people listening right now, they can just hear all the things that you're talking about and be like, wow, that's the kind of life I want to live, man. Like,
well, I
all
hope
these
so. I
different
mean,
things.
maybe some. I guess if you're listening to this, you're a creative yourself, right?
And so for them, for the people listening, like, you know, you're here right now, but kind of like, I want to kind of go deeper into like where you started from, because there's a lot of people kind of at point A.
Right.
You know, you've been point B, C, D.
Right.
You know what I mean? So like, for you, how would you define your point A? You know what I mean? For yourself, like, what was point A for you to get to where you are today, to kind of help people get that jumping point or like recognize that?
It's a dope question. I think it has to start with like curiosity, right? Like trying to learn something new that you haven't learned yet. And for me, I always knew that I was like more of like a creator. Like I'd like to be hands-on. It doesn't matter if I'm like doing a renovation or if I'm making music or art, you know. A strategy, I really have to sneeze.
No, go for it, brother.
Elbow, bro.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Elbows. But yeah, man, sorry about that. And basically for me, it started kind of like when I seen my dad and my mom being creative and, you know, like trying to make it work through the first few years of Canada, like being in Canada and stuff like that. And they've always been like really like, that's why I always give them the props. They deserve it. You know what
Where
I
are
mean?
your parents
like,
from, brother?
I'm from like former Yugoslavia, the
Wow,
Balkan
dude.
region. Yeah.
Jeez, and there's like they're creatives too. So what were they?
Yeah,
what
most
were they
def.
like?
My pops is a musician, a composer.
Yeah.
Also like a really like genius tech dude as well. You know, so kind of like combining the two worlds together.
Right.
My mom was a dancer, and her whole life, and doing like folklore dance back home and stuff like that, and just like always like good taste in music, and you know I just see a lot around, and that spirit stuck with my sister and I. You know what I mean? Like not being afraid to start new things, to kind of like just like, as my dad says, like try to fail your idea.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Try to like sink your shit.
I love that.
Because then that's the only way you can continually kind of keep digging out what works. Because it's not like one thing's going to work, you know what I mean? It's like 24 hours in a day multiplied by years.
Right.
It's more of that journey that counts, you know? And just like, yeah, sum it up with like, just like curiosity, just wanting to do it, like figure it out.
Yeah, man, like that's kind of interesting though, right? Because like coming from an immigrant family, being like, yo, fail a lot.
Right.
Right, that's kind of unique, right? Or how did you feel?
I
Like
think it was more like assess it, you know, like measure 3 times, cut once.
Right,
you know,
right.
It wasn't necessarily like, don't feel so stifled by an idea, even if it feels like it's too illustrious and it's like you don't know where to begin with it. I feel like you have to break it down into like doable actions. So I wasn't always great at that, but I've always been that in my concepts in my head, you know. So as I took my amateur ways, you know, like dropped out of college, went back to college for like audio and like trying to learn like the academic pursuit of it and see like what's going on behind the scenes a little bit with it. I grew my confidence, and I started getting like contracts and being asked to do projects that felt unattainable. And it was only because I kind of like created like a doable structure that, you know, I could send in a project and get signed off on it, even with very little experience in the industry. Right. Because that artist know-how, you know, that curiosity, like, let me just try to figure this out. You know, what are others doing? Yeah. Like, let me travel, let me go to New York, let me have a conversation with this dude that I really respect. Right. Let me see, like, and people do give you the time of day, and I've had a lot of amazing mentors through the years that have just like helped me cultivate my ideas. Yeah, man, it's been blessed, dude. Yeah, dude. So yeah, you mentioned mentors, man, and I think mentorship is so important. Like, who are kind of the main mentors in your life, and kind of what lessons or kind of pieces of wisdom that they pass down to you that you can kind of share with our audience? I've had a couple throughout my life, and most of them have kind of taught me kind of like resilience and constantly planning versus like sticking to like one plan and one thing and trying to be like too hard-headed about it, because like there's too many moving objectives and XYZ factors in life that like we can't necessarily just stick to a plan. So it's just like trying to structure your life into having like, okay, a moment for your vision. And you know, I do that while biking or like playing ball or you know, shooting the shit with like friends. That's where like I find mentorship is only important if you're looking at sharing that idea with others to structure it and be able to apply it, which means like you gotta have homies, you gotta have people around you that are like eye to eye to be able to calibrate these ideas to bring them to real life. And yeah, man, one of them was Remy Kabaka of the Gorillas, and he kind of took me under his wing for a bit. He's the producer behind the Gorillas, and that was super blessed, because I really got to see how the management works, how setting up tours works, how bidding for tours works. Right. You know, where and it just took away the mystery of the industry to me. And I was also very lucky to meet a gentleman that was one of the founders of the Juno Awards, and that was just by pure luck and chance and just being out there.
Yeah, tell me more about that experience, man. How did luck and chance play into that opportunity for yourself? Like,
I feel like you have to kind of be okay with yourself on the inside. And if you're not fully okay with yourself on the inside, you have to I always say, meet the universe halfway. You know, you have to do something to indicate that you're moving towards that objective before you have something come your way. You know what I mean?
Ask you this, man.
But that literally felt like it came my way. I met the dude at a Timmy's.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's crazy.
I was walking back from church and I met the dude at Timmy's, and he approached me just wanting to shoot the shit, you know? And I just had the time, and I didn't judge him oh, this is somebody elderly, you know, what does he want from me? He doesn't even know me. No, I sat there with him and I talked, and that was another dime drop. You know, all of these dimes dropped were the reason why I even had the audacity to think about, you can form a label yourself. Why not? You know what I mean? Who's going to tell you you can't?
Right. Yeah, that's amazing, man. And I want to talk more about Free 99 and what you guys do. And so I guess for the upcoming artists out there who want to what do you look for when you're signing a new artist to the label, to be a part of your team? What's the most important thing for
magic inside the character, man? There's it's like a family, a collective. So you find that having an open door policy, but a control to it as well. So it's people know the direction of where this is headed, and I think that people don't need to be taught an identity. They usually embrace an identity. So it's not about finding the right or the wrong people. It's about introducing the idea. Slowly the platform grows, and from there I have some, and eventually with time they either draw closer or further away from the idea. So one thing I really believe in is if you do create an idea of which others are a part of, you have to understand that it's an ecosystem of its own, and that you can't necessarily be, which is fairly representative of humans and nature. You know what I mean? You can't take nature for granted. So I apply nature's laws a lot to my business strategies. You know what I mean?
Can you give us an example, an analogy that kind of likens nature to your business?
Yeah, inherently, I will never tell anybody what to do. I'm more on a psychological level. I can sit down and have the time and the space to talk to you. And if we can't draw an idea out of the conversation, we have to break it down into factors and study the metrics of an idea. But then when it comes to signing somebody, I'm not signing based on metrics. I don't really care if they have performance. You know what I mean? Because in this industry, you can't work for one goal. Again, it'll disappear by next week. We could work so hard on this video, but if it doesn't have all the other counterparts kind of constantly working in the background, then it's just an idea in the air. You know what I mean? So the same thing with artists is, some artists, I feel they have daily habits that indicate that they're going to become successful.
100%.
I can just see it. You know what I mean? And it's not you have to be this way, you have to be this methodical, you gotta look like this, you gotta say this. It's really kind of represented more by in nature, this person does music inherently well. And this person deserves to be known. Because you can tell in the preservation of a person's character, if there's too much ego, or if he's devoid of ego and not believing in himself, but there's this talent thing that speaks for itself. You notice what kind of archetype person this is. And I don't mind if somebody sees like gains from something. That's the whole point. I want everyone to gain as
100%.
much as possible. The thing is, my idea I didn't want to make it exclusive, so I didn't want people to feel like they're trapped inside my idea. That's why I said the ecosystem must exist, and I encourage them to like grow their wings. You know what I mean? To like build, to do their thing, and we did that for each other. They do that for me as well, and I think that became the new norm, at least with our collective. So it's like this unspoken, I got you.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
And that's exactly what culture is, right?
That's what culture is.
And actually, I want to like dig deeper into because you mentioned something that I thought was really great, which was like, you know, the main thing I'm looking at when I'm looking at an artist is his daily habits. You know what I mean? And I want to dig deeper into you because obviously I think a lot of people admire a life where you're really like literally, man, you're creating and doing the things that you love for a living, man. So like, what kind of daily habits should people kind of cultivate so that they can kind of be living a process and a life that they desire to live, that's based on their own passions?
So, definitely, great question. I'm still haven't mastered it. I'm still a student 100%. Of the game, so I think like honesty with yourself, and not living outside of your means, meaning like don't blindside yourself. You know when I know when I'm doing it. You know what I mean? 100%. You know, and I'm just like, I shouldn't buy these like $300 sneakers, but like they're fire. You know what I mean? And it's like we all get caught in it. I guess it's just not making that a loop. You know, like I think 100%. My daily to like bring something out of it is to figure out a path of how you can like deadlines work, dude. Yeah. Deadlines really work, dude. Like when you set yourself deadlines, you tend to finish things a whole lot more. Right. And when it comes to like what takes your priority is giving things value, not time. Because like time is valuable, so everything that you do within time is gonna probably be valuable, right? To you. You're even. That's why we fight things, and I think that most things as a process, like, oh man, I love the creative side of it, but all of this is such a burden, is finding a way to streamline your burden. Right. Not necessarily becoming a jack of all trades where it might take you forever to learn certain skills that certain people have just like a ridiculous aptitude level on. Right. So it's that person over there is looking to collaborate with people and they love what they do. Cool. So I have an idea and I have a person that's looking for this service or this product and this is how much we can monetize it for. Right. That means that allocate this much budget to this human and this human and this human. The idea keeps going. And I always say, bring your brand to the table. Right. Leverage your brands. Because I've always been that. Like since like even when like I went from like grassroots strategies for artists into more like corporate, Nike, fast-paced environment. I was using what I was used to using, and I was just scaling it. So if I knew that the root level of culture is this, I don't have to do a derivative of it. Right. You know what I mean? And I think like all of these learning experiences came through time. So like there's no perfect time to start a business. There's no perfect business plan. And even if you have one, that doesn't mean you're going to have a perfect execution of your perfect business plan. So there's really no perfect time to do anything. It's like you're going to become better at what you do. You're going to find a streamlined process for it. Because you're going to realize you're doing this one thing too much, but there's this company that does it, and for 10%, you know what I mean? Yeah, so like running a label, for example, I've tried to streamline it where I was looking to get into like places and communicate with people that could provide a service, and I'm not paying them out. When I make money, they make money. Right. You know what I mean? That's the model I like. Yeah. And that doesn't mean I don't mind, like I don't like spending money or whatnot. And my daily, I think I went a little bit more on a tangent there, but my daily is this: reminding myself it's a journey. sleeping well, eating well, communicating to, like, having just the right amount of good communication to certain people in that day, but not everyone.
Right.
And I don't answer my phone all the time.
Yeah.
I don't answer random numbers. Usually I rely on email or LinkedIn for that. I've set myself to a certain rule set, and it works for me.
Yeah.
It gives me that just enough buffer, just enough time to be able to process my thoughts, think about what's important and what's not.
Right.
And I don't fight. If I need to push something an hour, I don't mind.
Right.
The
100%.
thing is, we
And
live
that
in a
goes
world
back to
where
like
it's
you
like,
saying like being okay with yourself, right? Like that's one of the things that you look for and stuff like that, right? So like actually I'm sure like in the process of things, I know for myself, like I haven't always been okay with myself, man. You know what I mean? And like I'm wondering that for you, like have you always been like that, or are there tools that you have to kind of like
tools.
Yeah,
Totally.
So,
all
tools.
It's all tools. It's a Swiss Army knife, dude.
Right.
No, I wasn't born like that, man. I struggled with it.
Yeah.
A lot of confidence issues, anxiety, like self-creating, like anxiety that like, oh, it could not you. Somebody else could make it work, not you.
Right.
You know,
Right.
what makes you think that you got it? You know what I mean? There was this wrong approach.
Right.
Where I realized that it doesn't have to exist. And I use meditation. I bike. I find like that my biking gets my mind really like straight. I spend a lot of time outdoors. I work on my patio too, just whenever I can, just to get the air. I pray. Works for me.
Right.
And I connect with positive people, and I like try to like lift them up too,
Right,
you know, because I feel that spirit's intact, man. You know, we're all interconnected like that. So I get my day right, man, and I try not to like put stress on things that, because like you can only do so many tasks in a day, like Gucci, before it starts like falling off, and your like ideas don't make sense no more. You're tired. So making the right decisions, not putting empowering and putting too much stress on things that are just like dishes. You know, like
100%.
dumb shit.
But yeah, man, like, you know, a lot of things you're talking about here today are like business focused. You know what I mean? You're talking about strategy. You're talking about, you know, monetization. These different things, man. And you're also a creative. Like, how does? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there, they're like, hey man, I'm the creative, I'm the artist, but I'm also a hustler. I'm the one grinding too. I'm the one making moves for myself. How do you balance that out? Like, because I know for myself, that's a challenge for me, like trying to balance my art and my productivity.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so how do you balance those two kind of like dualities, you know?
Working accurately, man. Like when as a producer, as an engineer, there's so many tips and tricks I can give for like days, you know what I mean? Like to like complete a song, I strictly stick to one thing, and I open another folder, I finish the idea. If it's trash, I delete it, you know what I mean? But like if I'll know within 5-10 minutes if something's trash and if it's worth my time, and then once I hit it, I'm sessioning.
Right.
This is all I'm doing. I'm not picking up my phone unless you call me and I know it's an emergency or you just gotta talk. Let's do it. But like that's what I'm doing. We gotta cultivate that out of each other, dig it out, find a way to complete it, put it to the side, think about when you're gonna launch it, when you're gonna send it for mixing, when you gotta do something with it. That's the way I fundamentally shape it. It's hard. I feel like I don't have enough time. Time is just flying by. I'm just having such a blast that I guess that's a blessing, right? Like,
well, do you feel like that structure, that kind of like systematic way of producing music, do you think that lends to creativity, or do you feel like that's something that you have to battle with? Like, I want a system for this so that I can be productive with it, but it's like, how do you feel about that balance?
Well, it is a balance. I think that you're gonna take away a little bit of like, it's more like not going to the studio and having to set up all your equipment every time, but everything's plugged in, ready to play. Like going towards those type of things where it promotes you to just get into this space and automatically
removing any resistance from you and creating
removing as much resistance as possible.
Yeah,
exactly. And that's generally in life, man. You know what I mean? Like I resist only if I feel like it takes like this and this and this and this, my mind's like, oh, I can't, you know, I don't got time for that. But then when the moment where you sit down, of course you got time for it, because when you sit down, you're there for an hour and a half, 2 hours, 3.
Right.
So yeah, I think like when you want to just do something, do it. You know, if you're a producer, you should be producing all the time. I don't care what nobody says.
Right, yeah, man.
And then you'll notice your sound just got real nice.
Yeah, it's consistency, it's reps. That's dope, man.
It's just reps. Yeah, it's just like gains, bro.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, it's gains, man.
Yeah,
it's little by little.
So like just back on your production and your sound, like, you know, listening to some of your music, like 98 tape versus like Tokyo Freeway. Like the sounds are so different, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I really admire artists who have unique sounds, but you do it in like, I got a unique sound and then I got another unique sound, and like, so where do you draw your inspiration from, man, from your music?
I am a huge just culture, art, music head fiend, man. You know, like I kind of questioned myself too at one point in time, like, do I have to like make a new name to do this? Do I have to do this and that? And honestly, it just kind of like at one point in time surfaced to me that I don't need to do that, and that I just can make music.
Right.
And if it like jives inside, it's usually the counterpart to jiving with other people too. Like, I don't know, you know, when it like it in your heart of hearts, that shit bumps.
Yeah.
You just
100%.
know it's gonna hit. You just know it's gonna hit with everybody. And I'm like, I can't really sum it up, but like I got all these experiences and colors and like movies and like styles like kung fu inside my brain, and like whenever I feel like doing a certain move, I bust it out. You know what I mean? And then like I envision myself like, okay, cool. It doesn't need to be a whole new thing. It's just like this exists in this era.
Yeah.
I want this in this era. 98 tape is just like this raw version of me. This one person, like part of my character, because a lot of me has changed over time. I think that I've hopefully have become a better version of me. But there's like this guy, this element in this era that I had that 98 tape represents, and I don't want it to go away.
Right.
So I cultivate it because it is a certain place in life where I was, and now I don't do it out of like anger or like intensity. I bring the intensity in the cipher. It's that rap shit. That's where I get the rap, and 100%. That's where like I say the most gems, dude. That's like that's where I speak. I don't speak a lot like on different. I speak a lot of shit. I talk a lot of shit with the homies, but on the internet, you won't catch me talking like that. Like.
Is there a reason for that? Is there a reason for that? Like, that you don't share that stuff on the internet? I didn't cultivate that platform. I'm using it as a tool. That's not my platform. Right. I'm not a newscaster. Right, 100%. I'm a musician. I'm an MC. At least in the form of how I choose to define myself when it comes to like expressing what I feel about social issues or this or that. I tend to be able to explain myself better when I can sit there, pen to pad, and philosophize that idea and just like etch it in stone. So I feel like that's the real me. That's the that's the one I want you to hear. Right. Because there's this dog in me, this like thing I probably for the rest of life I will like have to be aware of, that in the moment I might not be like that unless it's like the perfect environment like this where my headspace is there to be able to articulate it. Right. That's why I don't do it so often. Right. You know what I mean? Because man. And I love that perspective actually. Like your music is kind of a snapshot of the time. Because like I speak to a lot of different artists and musicians, and they'll have created a sound or created some songs, and then by the time they're ready to release it, they're like, this isn't me anymore. And so I don't want to release it. Right. And so I love that perspective of like, this was a part of me. And like I'm kind of letting it be etched in stone, and I never want to lose this part of me, but also recognizing that this doesn't define me. This piece of work doesn't define me.
There's just this abstract, tangible sound that just I relate to, and I know through that lens that I have a certain focal point
Right.
and structure, that I deliver a certain style of message. You know what I mean? And that's just as an artist, that's just like my thing. When it comes to like what I call like Blap House
Right.
in Tokyo is this like fun loving, wild, like world traveling, like inspired by all these crazy sounds I've heard. When it comes to Blap House and like Tokyo Expressway, I take a different route, man. Like I like to make electronic music a lot, but still kind of express like certain elements of like funk, G-funk, hip hop in it, and that's how I kind of like found my sound. I started incorporating certain production techniques from like hip hop and stuff I was working on the other side into house music, and with like a grittier sound, a little bit more texture. Slowed down a little bit, so it's like slowed house. I call it Blap House, you know, because it comes from like that whole like beatsy and stuff. And yeah, man, it's just like another way to express myself, and I get to like think outside the box, and I love to sample things from all over. Like I'll go to a park and hear like a tam tam and like people playing, and I'll use that as you know, and I'll flip different instruments and I'll sample like Japanese records or like Hungarian records, whatever. But I find that Japanese disco scene from like the 60s, 70s super fly, and it's worked for kind of like steering my production into like that style. But now that I understand what that style is, I don't even really sample too much. I sample my own stuff, like on a new record, Orbita, that I have coming out soon, which is strictly electronic production.
Wow, dope.
Yeah, man, that one's got like a bunch of different like touches of everything. Like I sampled a cathedral outdoors from a laptop and flipped it, sent the bass line down to like Barbados to get done, and just got that like really heavy like the movement. And yeah, man, just like collecting like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Love the counter rhythms of like world music, Brazilian, African, like continentally African music. Yeah, man, just put it all together and shit. Yeah.
So like taking that venture into house or Blap House, as you like to call it, right? Like, was that a conscious decision? Because like, you know, we spoke about that random encounter in Timmy's. You know what I mean? Was that a conscious decision, or was that something that kind of like serendipitously?
It started to sort of be defined through 99 Wolves, was a group that I was a part of and still collaborate with Moses Belanger quite a lot. Label mates. Yeah, we started to define that sound. I think that I took a little bit more of a route to take it a little bit more hip hop, and that was just my addition to like what we did together. He's like a really outstanding electronic producer in general. But his electronic game and his like house production is phenomenal, and me coming more from like that alt side, the left field shit, you know, like, so I think I took an extrapolated 3-4 years of us working together to create that sound, and I just kind of took it in my own direction from there. So to be honest with you, I think it all kind of stems from like my love of house and being a DJ in Toronto and all over, and you know, I'm really into house music, you know what I mean? I really studied the game from back in the day, like Chicago era, New York, like private parties back in the day, and I just love it. And just adding new instrumentation to it and putting an organic feel to it, guitars, violins, trumpets, whatever you have around you, it creates like this unique sound, man. And I brought it back to like a reinvented disco, so it's got that slap of Dilla, and it still has that like kind of like breathiness of like ethereal house and shit like that, but at the same time it's like my own, I feel, you know what I mean?
Yeah, man, I really mess with the sounds and the images that you're creating with your music, man.
Thanks,
it's amazing.
I
And
appreciate it.
And like, yeah, like in our conversation, you're just mentioning so much, man. Like you're in house, you're in hip hop, you're a DJ. Like, I think that's a common thing for a lot of people, man. We all have kind of multiple loves in this life, and I think that the unique thing about you as an individual is you've really struck in a balance with that. And so, like,
I hope.
What advice can you give to people who are like, man, because you're a barber too, you do a lot of stuff, you know what I mean? Like, I like someone who's like, man, I love to do this, that, I love music, I love art, I love business, I love all this stuff. Like, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to just kind of continue being uniquely themselves and not pigeonhole themselves into one thing?
Right. So develop your ideas in increments. So like if like my barber game started early, and I always try to invest in it. So like I look at seasons. You know what I mean? Like kind of like a team. You know, like you got your season. You gotta have a certain kind of trajectory for that season, a certain kind of gameplay that season. You gotta see what you did in the season before to get better than you were. And I think that I can't do everything at once.
100%.
So I have days where I focus more on music and days where I'm barbering. And now I only barber about 2-3 days a week, which is perfect for me because I keep my relationships intact. I keep my skill intact. I still enjoy barbering. Pardon me. I still enjoy barbering quite a lot, and I meet people from different avenues. Yeah, man. I think structuring your life, man, is not a bad thing. You know, putting pen to paper and visualizing, getting it out of your head, starting somewhere and making it real, so it's not like super illustrious and hard to like ideate. You know, you just gotta put it to paper.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a really great insight, man, because I think a lot of the time we think about balance in life is like, you know, from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do like, you're going to be everything at once, but really I guess it's like the seasons of like you said, like, you know, right now I'm focusing on my music and I'm doing like, you know, my barbering on the side right now, but maybe there's going to be other times in your life where you have to adjust that, right? So I think
exactly
that's going to help a lot of people out there, man.
And just not trying to fit a square in a circle peg, bro. Like not fighting it. You know what I mean? Just understanding where you're at and what you got to do. You fundamentally can't take your eyes off the prize. You got to keep going. You got to maintain a certain level of composure to the stress levels that will come your way. If you take too much of an undertaking and look at too much of the results, it'll be too intimidating. Right. So I think that building incrementally every single day and setting those habits into play, bro, I really believe in like compound choices. So make choices that you know will link to the next choice. Even if you can't see it right now, just wait long enough and you'll see that it will. And being mindful of that will kind of keep you kind of continually keeping it intact, you know? And yeah, man,
And how much would you say like that next step thing, and how much of that is strategic and how much of that is faith, belief? Like how much is like, what is that?
It's both, dog. Yeah, definitely. Because sometimes it's just like the right place, right time, right right skills, right vibe. That things come together, but you got to be proactive. I think you got to seek it, man.
Right.
You got to go out there and seek it. The world is to be discovered. Not being afraid of anybody. I treat homeless people and billionaires the same way, man.
100%.
The same way, bro. You have to not earn my respect. You start with a level of respect, but you can lose it. Just like I can lose it with you. So with that intact, it's like, I'm not here trying to be malicious. I'm here just trying to build my empire. And my empire is just like what I believe is a belief system. That doesn't mean I'm trying to take away from the next man's empire. Right. And my empire just so happens to have skill sets that can maybe assist another person's empire in building. Vice versa. Right. That person has skills that I don't have. It's not idealism. I think that you just have to be in the moment, be mindful, and be really present with what you're doing. Whatever you choose to do in that moment, you have to empower it. You have to, like, if you're writing a verse and you want a classic song, you have to think. You got to place yourself into a classic place. Classic frame of mind. Rakim said that. You got to, like, before you actually go to the mic, you have to poise yourself, collect yourself, and get to a point where you understand that, yeah, this is a trajectory. I know my greatness. I feel it right now. You know what I mean? Yes. You don't need to put emphasis on it when you're already surrounded by the idea of it and then the belief of it. It just so happens to be packaged that way. And most people will interpret it the same way you do. You know, like Diddy says, like, put on a fresh outfit before you do something. Like, that's important. Right. You know, don't make bad decisions looking and smelling funny. You know what I mean?
100%, man.
You know, make important decisions when you're like fly. You know, it's not superficial. It's just about training your mind into confidence.
Getting into that mindset, poison yourself, and putting yourself in that position before going and doing something like
absolutely
incredibly
super important.
Yeah,
super important.
Man.
Don't go into it without assessing yourself and your surroundings. Do it when you know, and there's no perfect time. It's just when you've done that, you're good to go. 100%. You can go from there and do it. Yeah, man. That's how I approach it.
Yeah, that's great. That's some great insight, man. And I'm sure there's like a lot of musicians and artists listening right now, and so I want to kind of dig deeper into that. You mentioned it earlier, you know, like how things are kind of changing with the whole COVID situation, live performance and stuff like that. We're kind of in you know, unpredictable times right now. So like you've had some time in the game now. Where do you kind of see the game going now with this? Like, you know, how can artists who are currently trying to continue on their journey, promote their music and create, like, do you have any advice for them in this current environment?
Yeah, I utilize technology, you know, and connect with your peers in different ways. You know, set up little ciphers, set up sessions, do digital streams. Go hit up brands to do a digital stream for them. You know what I mean? You might have lost, like, let's say, like we've all lost like the ability to earn from live shows right now.
Right.
And even though it's coming back, for me, I'm like, I don't want to be the first to because it's image, right? Like I don't want to create a new risk. I'm fine with accepting the terms currently.
Yeah.
I don't need to go against the wind, bro. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I can already sense that there could. What if COVID got worse?
Right.
And you were pioneering the comeback of the party scene.
Right.
And then you're looked at a certain kind of way. That's your brand image. I let my spirit guide me, and I make decisions I feel like they're like set in the divine time, and you just know when it's right. So I'm starting to introduce ideas like, let's say, meetups for smaller groups of people, where there's music and food involved, but like it's kind of like a little structured, just to get people talking, because digital is still killing it more than ever. You know what I mean? So utilizing that switch over is going to be really important, because even in the next 2 years, the internet is going to become a massive beast.
Definitely.
Compared to even now. You're going to look at it like this. Right, my dog, I was reading a stat, and it said that by next year, over 85 to 88% of the world's population will be at least on 3G network.
Wow.
That's massive. That's ridiculous.
Right.
The opportunities to be able to present your ideas to platforms is you're setting up long play successes. So if I'm looking at barbering, for example, and what I can give as like advice is, don't pick your harvest until it's time, because your vegetable will be like too small. You know what I mean? It won't be worth eating. You gotta let that shit grow first. So there's long play things like you want to become identified a little bit within Japanese culture. Start building the relationships. Send stuff to media. Go on Google Translate. Find your Japanese friend. Go online and find a service that can translate things for you. Hit them up. They're waiting. I guarantee you. You know, and then you might not be able to do a show right now, but that doesn't matter. You have an idea that you're cultivating for a long play. And then you have things that you're doing for that. You know what I mean? And if you don't have it yet, again, there's no such thing as like, you gotta give a little bit of humility. There's no such thing as being too good for a job. You know what I mean? Your first job might not be, or your first 3 jobs might not even be the ones that you're looking to get.
100%.
But find a way in an employer that can understand your vision, and they might never understand fully. So just like assess the situation of where you're working, and don't undercut yourself. Work for someone that understands the vision and gives you the wiggle room to be able to invest in yourself while you're not at work.
100%.
You know what I mean? And with that, you're gonna strike relationships. Go on LinkedIn and hit people up on LinkedIn, even media groups, and get a paid internship if you're fresh in the game. If you're been in the game forever, start new relationships.
Right.
You know, every brand is looking for content. Every brand.
100%.
You know, you might be sitting on beats for days right now, and you're like, well, all these rappers, I got to get a rapper that's big to rap on this before I get shine. But you could be selling your stuff to like a Gap commercial for like 50 racks.
Right.
You know what I mean? You could get a placement on Netflix. How do you do that? Go on YouTube, go on Google, figure out the first step. That's going to lead you somewhere else. There might be a guy in the comment section. It might be the video itself. And it's going to tell you the next step.
Right.
Then you're going to bring that information to somebody that's a peer or a group or a community member and ask the right questions.
Right.
So that person already knows that you've invested, that you didn't come there like with your hands up being like, teach me everything.
Right.
Those people will want to teach you.
Right. That's
because
great,
you've
man.
already stepped into the realm of caring enough to present some sort of knowledge.
Right. And some sort of value, right?
Some sort of value.
Right.
And somebody will probably take you under their wing. Create leverage. Don't look at Instagram as like the be all end all, or TikTok or whatever. Maybe it's a tool.
Right.
You know what I mean? And if you want to market yourself as a TikToker, then that's your strategy.
Right.
Then you got to work on a healthy dose of shit to do to create that. You know what I mean? That's its own thing.
Yeah. And
That's
great, man. That's some amazing strategic advice. And like you said something in there that like really kind of caught my attention, and it was, you know, I let my spirit guide me.
right.
You know what I mean? And I think intuition, you know, with all the strategic things that you're kind of putting out there to help out our audience and like kind of having tactical ways of dealing with things, I think intuition is kind of one of those things that maybe isn't necessarily tangible, but like, you know, obviously you allow it to guide you. So do you have any ways that you tap into your intuition? Do you have any practices to do so, or is that just something that comes naturally to you?
I think that we all have the natural ability to tap into it. We all have like these antennas in us. Some people call it something under like maybe a religious aspect of looking at it. Some people that are maybe not religious look at it and define it as something different. I believe in like there's this give and take with the universe, and that you have to kind of treat your body like a temple in certain ways. If you drink, don't overdrink. If you smoke, don't treat it like an addiction. Do it to better a mood when you're already without problems.
Right.
You know what I mean? Not to like solve issues.
Yeah.
I think that's a big one because that's what the first step to like having to deal with something. I think taking it easy on yourself. Knowing that you won't achieve everything right away, and that it is about the journey, and reminding yourself of this, and look at your bottom, look at your low. Like everybody has a different one. Mine, for example, is like I have parents that love me and homies that would give me a couch like on site.
100%, man.
So my low, luckily, thank God, is not that low. You know what I mean?
100%.
So then it doesn't make me feel as if I'm falling through the cracks of the earth if I make a decision.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's blessed, man. And on that note, man, like you have some music to share with us, right? Like tell us a little bit about this track that you made here.
It's called Sideways. I made it a little bit ago. It was inspired actually when you guys came down years ago to Montreal.
Yeah, I remember
and
that,
I think
man.
Seraphin was rocking a t-shirt with like a side pocket that was like placed all the way on the side, like breast pocket that was like here, and it was just like the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And then we started making like a ballad about a side pocket. That got me into writing some bars, and that's kind of like because of the story, and I know we're connected with it, is why I chose to do this one.
That's
today.
blessed, man. Well, before we get into the performance, like where can people find you, man? Where can people connect with you?
Anyway, I'm on Instagram, el.wav, free99records.com. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just type in Free 99 Records, you'll find me. You can probably find me. Where else can you find me, man? Like, SoundCloud, it's ELMNT, ELMNT. The label is at free-99 or free 99 records, whatever you can remember. Reach out if you have questions, if you have music, if you have an idea, if this spoke something and invoked you to talk to me, please hit me up.
Bless, man. Thank you so much
Thank you for
joining us today,
having me,
man.
brother. Much love.
Take care, brother.
Yes, sir, brother.